Welcome back. It's been a while. This is actually the 10th of April that this race took place. This event took place at Castle Combe, so it's taken me a while to get to the point where I can edit this video. Been pretty busy, but I'll take that as a good sign. And this first race of the season was actually pretty mental. We started off in the dry, hot, sunny conditions, then it poured down with rain, and by the end of the race we had sunny conditions once again, but of course the track was still wet, so you could say 3 seasons within one race, that's for sure. And this is the first race we have GoPro footage from, the Classic and Modern. So it's good to be back. Apologies that it took so long to get this video out and edited, but this is 6 races in one day, and thanks to a discussion with the clerk of the course before we started racing, we only had to do 1 qualifying session, so we had 7 sessions within the day, but 6 races. So my 1 qualifying counted as my 3 required laps to go racing this day. So first race with footage is the Classic and Modern Motorsport Club South that we raced in last year, and we ended up as class champions, which was really cool. So we're back for 2023 at Castle Combe, a track that, to my knowledge at least, Castle Combe hasn't had the Classic and Modern on their bill ever. So this is quite a big moment for them. And obviously looking forward to some other tracks this year that we haven't been to in a while, Thruxton later on. But this first race was actually quite good. We started at the back, as I mentioned, because we didn't do a qualifying in this particular series. So started right from the back, had to make up some positions, and you can see here diving down the inside of the last corner on the wet part of the track still, and managing to get that overtake just about done. But I guess I do have quite a big advantage over a lot of people in this field, as I've raced Castle Combe quite a bit. As you've seen over the last few years on this channel, I've raced this track with this car quite a lot, and I'd say I have a good amount of experience around here. Probably the track that I have the most experience at. Maybe it's that and Brands Hatch, they're pretty similar. And I think that experience definitely paid off. I definitely wasn't driving my best. As I mentioned, this was the first event of the season, so I was knocking off some of that rust, and I hadn't done any sort of testing either. So this really was diving in at the deep end straight away, and you can see I was being a bit cautious. I didn't want to go crazy in these first races of the season, but actually I was racing with some cars that were quite far ahead of me the majority of last year, so I guess that gave me a bit of confidence. And in these conditions as well, damp conditions, I hadn't really driven in them too much, so that was a bit of a learning experience for me as well. We had tyres that are actually not too bad for these conditions. They weren't the wet tyres that we normally run, which were Pilot Sport sort of road tyres. They were sort of a Yokohama race tyre, which is still like the other tyres we've used, but it's definitely better in the wet conditions, the damp conditions, than say the Nankang tyre that we've used in the past, and apparently the Dunlop tyre, which we haven't used, but apparently that's not very good in the wet either. But definitely better than those, definitely better than the MRF. So a pretty good all-round tyre. Probably not the flat-out fastest tyre that we could be on, but I think as an all-round it's actually going to be quite a good one, which we're going to hopefully stay with for the majority of this year. The only problem is it's very expensive, and that's the only reason why we sort of put off using it for a long time. Obviously it's all my money that goes into this, so I would want to be sensible with the way I allocate my budget after the season. I don't want to go too crazy, spending too much on tyres. But we're doing all these 6 races on these tyres actually, because there just wasn't time in between to change over. Just myself and my dad is the crew, and my dad is the one that does all the sort of tyre changing and all that. But anyway, you can see we're having a good battle here with Ken Angel, and we're going to get down the inside of him here to take that position. From starting at the back of the grid to fight with these cars that were way ahead of me towards the end of last year, I took that as quite a good thing. I do realise my experience around this track is definitely an advantage right now, but I'm just taking that where I can and using that obviously experience to take me to a position where I haven't really been in this series before, which is really quite promising in the Super Saloon and Tin Tops mixed grid races especially. I've never been sort of this high up. And you can see there's a bit of a gap to this gaggle of cars in front, but some of the cars in there are probably worth 10 times what my Honda Civic is worth, so that's quite interesting to note here. And some of them are on slicks, which is not going to be so easy in these sort of damp conditions, or at least damp offline. It's probably not really damp online. You can see here the colour of the surface, you can see, is definitely dried up, but offline, just getting half a wheel onto that surface is not going to be fun on slick tyres. But regardless, around the rest of the track they should be a lot quicker. In front of me is Adrian Matthews. Now, really nice guy, we've chatted quite a lot over the last year or so. And I, to be perfectly honest, was completely surprised to be anywhere near him in this race because he's a very quick driver, a really good car as well. So to be this close to him at this stage of the race, I was really happy with, especially starting at the back of the field. But like I said earlier on, most of the guys that were racing in this race right now didn't have the experience around Castle Combe, and I think that really does pay off because it is definitely a confidence track. And even though I'm definitely not driving at my best on this first race of the season, I definitely wouldn't expect that, considering especially we had no testing, no track days, no nothing. This was literally the first time I'd driven this car in about 6 months, so I was quite happy with that. But still, I'm using my experience where I can here and just trying to keep up with some of these fast boys. But I'd say definitely wasn't driving to my limit in a lot of places here, and my fastest lap of the whole day as we get a nice little overtake here. But I suppose it's not really an overtake when you get let through, but I'll take it. But yeah, I should say we're not doing our best lap times here, but that wasn't really my aim here today. That was just to sort of get back in the zone and hopefully push on for the next couple of rounds at Mallory and some other rental races we'll be doing, hopefully be on the pace there. That's the aim. But anyway, last lap of the race here, and we get position because Adrian goes off the road here. I think missed his braking point by maybe a metre or two, not by much, but that little mistake there allowed me to get past. Of course, he didn't shut the door on the entrance of the track. He probably could have accelerated and defended from me going to this last corner here, and I wouldn't have put up too much of a fight. As I mentioned, it's really about getting the laps in and just making sure going to the next few rounds I'm in a good place. So bit of a punch of the air, just because coming from the back of the grid to overtake some of these cars, I was really proud of myself at the time. On reflection, probably didn't do anything too special, but to me at the time it felt like a really, really good race. And there are some cool overtakes in there. I can't say that isn't the case. For me at least, I don't really get to do much overtaking. It's normally me getting lapped or maybe just battling with one person for the rest of the race. But coming from the back to fight some of these fast cars was actually a really nice experience. Now, this would be a slightly different experience here. This is the GT Championship, so I'll just quickly explain. I was racing in the Hot Hatch, which you saw first, Classic and Modern, which you saw second, and what we're seeing here is the GT Championship. As mentioned before, my main thing about this whole day here was getting laps in, and the way it all worked out, this was the best one to go into. And we've raced with the GT guys before, and we all know they're a good bunch of guys and really good to race with. So my main two aims here are the two guys you see in front of me. I want to try and overtake both of them. That's my aim in the GTs, but also try and get a decent lap time. In the first race, I couldn't really get a decent lap time because of the weather conditions. Second race, well, I could have maybe got a better lap time in there, but let's be honest, I was sort of battling for a lot of that one, so I guess getting a full clear lap in there wasn't really possible. So early stages, we're battling with Ray here in his Ferrari, but as we've said already in this video, our aim isn't to go for crazy moves, get certain positions in the races. We just want to get more time in the car, get back in the zone, and hopefully going for the rest of this season be in a good place. So getting laps, that's the main thing here today, and it was a really good opportunity at Castle Combe to do all these events at, I guess, a relatively good cost because of the way it all panned out. But yeah, we do want to try and overtake these two guys in front here. So we've got the Ginetta G40, which is obviously a quick little car, and of course Ray and his Ferrari, which we've raced quite a few times actually on this channel. You will remember we had a good race at the start of 2022 with Ray, back and forth. Of course, he was getting me down the straight, I was able to get him through the corners. It was actually a really fun battle throughout the majority of the races we did with him last year, but I was not maybe going 100% in this race. I wasn't really keeping up with him as well as I did last year, so that's my excuse at least. But my first attempt was to try and get past the Ginetta, and I think he was relatively new to racing. I think he has the rookie cross in the back of his car. We'll see. Yeah, he does. There you can see from the onboard. But I wanted to make sure I got past cleanly. I was able to get past here, but having that experience around Castle Combe was allowing me to, I guess, get closer than I would with a driver that's maybe done hundreds and hundreds of races at Castle Combe. So there you are, get a move down the inside there, nothing too special, just getting a better exit and getting the overtake done. I'm not pushing to that 100%. I don't want to come back with, you know, issues with the car from this first round, so it was just really about getting those laps in, and I didn't want anything too silly to the other racers around me as well. But of course, we had ended up getting lapped, and you see some of the faster cars coming through here, and I thought this was an opportunity to try and close in on Ray, as he had managed to get quite a bit of a gap on me here, and you can see, I think it's Leo just behind in that Ginetto. So he's keeping me with my eyes on my mirrors, but you can see definitely a few laps after we are starting to catch up with Ray, but there just wasn't quite enough laps, and unfortunately our GoPro would of course fail at the end of this race, which is a bit of a shame. I took two sort of GoPro action cameras, and the first one just was really having a bad day, just kept overheating and kept failing. So onto the good GoPro for the rest of the day. Here's the hot hatch. So we didn't get to see the first race through GoPro because of course we had issues, but second race of the day was still a fun one. And actually I ended up getting my best result ever in the Hot Hatch Championship or Hot Hatch Series around Castle Combe in this second race of the day, which I'm actually really happy with. So the results, or the starting positions I should say, are down to qualifying, and it's your second fastest time, and I didn't really do many laps in qualifying. I think I was just trying to get sort of the 3 or 4 laps, so both of my lap times weren't good, and I started right at the back in both of the races. But regardless, wanted to get a clean start, not do anything too crazy, and then just try and pick my way up a few positions throughout this race. I guess sort of try and get to where I should be in this car from fighting through the back of the field, if that makes any sense. There's probably a natural place where this car should fall. If I can get there, that would be good, and especially if I'm starting from the back as well. So made up a couple of positions in the early stages. Also some fast cars overtook us from the start, so I guess it's probably evened itself out at pretty much where we started. Now we've got 2 minis battling in front of us here. Now they're of course in the same class. I think it's class E for minis around Castle Combe, and I think we're in class A, which is more down to just engine size up to 2100cc. So I'm never going to be that competitive in that class because I'm firstly not the best driver, and secondly the car obviously isn't tuned to within an inch of its life, which some of them are, but some of them are relatively similar to mine, but I'm just never going to be close to them because I'm just not quick enough. Regardless, we're catching up with this mini here, which I guess isn't too dissimilar in terms of probably power and weight, so it was a good little battle here. Probably do a bit more top end, so that was going to be my aim here, trying to get a clean enough exit through these corners here and get him coming into this next corner. And this seems to be my favourite corner to overtake at Castle Combe. I have no idea why. Maybe it's just because that's when my maybe slight power advantage over certain cars comes into effect, but that seems to be the place where I get most overtakes done. I think possibly I'm a little bit too scared to overtake into Quarry Corner. It's one of the most infamous corners in the UK for just moments and sideways action, but unfortunately we'd be met with a red flag moments later, which would see us restart in these positions right here. But me, having not done many standing starts, would unfortunately lose quite a few positions here. So I wasn't trying to be too aggressive off the start here, but regardless I did get a really bad start here. Lost 2 positions right away to the red Mini on the left, and that's actually Ray Ferguson, which we were speaking about earlier in his Ferrari. That's his MG as well, and I think there's also a Mini coming to our outside here. Now in the back of my mind I'm also thinking, bring this car home, we've still got to have 2 more races after this, so yeah, a bit cautious in these early stages whilst everyone's grouped up, with our main aim today just getting laps. I wanted to make sure that I had those last 2 races in the bank, so I didn't want to do anything too silly here. I got that bad start, I'm making excuses, but that's why I'm not really pushing too close to the limit in these early stages. I'm, in the back of my mind, quite confident I can get past these 3 cars. But the first one is Black Mini. See if I can get him around the outside. No, can't get him around the outside, but better run on the exit. I think he got a bit of a wobble over the curb on the inside, and of course my extra power comes into effect here, and we're down the inside and we get the overtake done. No, we don't. He's coming along down the inside of us, the outside of us, but he can't quite get that one done around the outside, and hopefully at this point I should be able to pull away a bit. And you can see a few laps later we're on the back of Ray in his MG. So let's see what happened here. Got a better run through the first chicane here, that's for sure. The MG is obviously down on power in comparison to my Honda here, but I think I did get a better run through these few corners anyway, and even if we were in the same car, I think I might have been able to get this overtake done as we pull to the inside here, and we're side by side into the braking zone. I brake probably about 10 meters later, get the move on Ray and up another position. Now you can see that red Mini we were battling with just before the red flag has actually got ahead of this silver and blue Clio, so that's going to be an aim to get past here as well. We're actually behind another EP3. I guess that's where I'd say the natural pecking order is for this car, is that EP3 there, very similar in terms of performance to my car. So I get the move down the inside of the Clio, so that's a good thing there. Got that overtake done, or am I going to complete it on the exit? I run a bit wide, touching the curbs on the exit. I'm looking in my mirror and I've just about got that one sorted as we exit the corner, and I've got both of those two cars we've just passed just behind us. And we don't see it on camera, but that Wyatt red and black Civic just ahead, I think it's Mike Wyatt in that car, he managed to get past the Mini once more and start to pull away. So my eyes were set on trying to get past the Mini again. We'd done so before the red flag, and now I was going to try and get that move done again. Definitely a bit more top end speed here, or possibly he missed a gear there, because I did seem to get a lot of overspeed on him, and I get the overtake done, and now I've got to push for the next few corners, make sure that he doesn't have the opportunity to dive it down my inside as we're quite near the end of this race. Just try and keep the pace up for the rest of this race, and there's the checker flag, not too much further into the future, and we're not that far behind that EP3 which I mentioned, so I was pretty happy with that. On to the 5th of 6 races here today, and this one maybe had the most, not we wouldn't say drama, but in terms of action I guess you could say this was probably the one that would maybe the closest battle. This one and that previous hot hatch race were both quite good. So not a terrible start from the rolling start, because all of the cars in front of us have substantially more power. I think Adrian, he got a good start anyway, but he does have more power than me, so getting me down to the first corner was probably going to happen. And then, unfortunately for us, this Golf with slick tyres on it, really quite slow off the start here, and I could have probably, on reflection, dived it down the inside of him there, but very, very slow through these first few corners here, and me not being very decisive, maybe just trying to make sure I bring it home, was not making that move there. I should have probably gone around the outside in reflection, but as mentioned already, the Classic and Modern guys hadn't been here, so a lot of them hadn't raced here, so I think I also was just thinking, don't do anything too silly here, because some of the other drivers here won't know where the overtaking opportunities are at Castle Combe in terms of where they might be overtaken, so didn't want to put it 3 wide on the first lap. But bit naughty here that Golf moves onto the braking. I mean, unlikely I was going to really get past, but you know, I was putting the pressure on, but moving onto the braking like that would mean little to no room for me to, you know, if I locked up or something, it would definitely be contact. It's a bit unnecessary there, could have caused an accident, but thankfully all good. I think he was really struggling with tyre temp, getting his slick tyres up to temperature. This car's got about 350-400 horsepower to my knowledge, and on those slick tyres I guess you'd assume he'd be up the road a bit, but just struggling in these early stages at Castle Combe. Wasn't the hottest conditions, even though the sun was out, it was quite bright. Wasn't the hottest conditions, so I guess it was taking him a bit more time than expected to get those tyres up to temperature, so definitely we'll see him shoot off into the distance soon. It's just these early stages where he's struggling, and I guess it's sort of in the middle of our battle here. So I tried once more to look down the inside here, didn't block the door this time, so I still felt that I was being held back quite a bit here, but it's part of racing, of course, isn't it? And you can see he shot off into the distance a few laps later, so he'll be looking to try and get past Ken Angel just in front of him right now, as both myself and Adrian have a bit of a moment through that first chicane. They're not the best, but then we see, if we look to my windscreen, lots of fluid coming up onto the windscreen, and unfortunately Adrian has a car issue here and some sort of fluid, I can't remember whether it's coolant or not, coming out his engine and obviously going all over my windscreen. And this sort of just came into my head, like, don't push too crazily into the next few corners, because there could be fluid all over your tyres, you don't want to slide off. So I don't know if that's what happened here, but Martin Scott in that VW Golf with slicks ends up crashing into the tyre wall, and I think he ends up retiring. So yeah, maybe his tyres still weren't up to temperature there, maybe it was fluid on his tyres, but all of this would eventually bring out a safety car. And you can see this shot here, I think the safety car had just been brought out, but I'm not exactly sure the reason why. The safety car didn't really back up the pack that much, and I was following around Ken here at this speed. I mean, I guess we could have been going a bit quicker here, but yeah, definitely not going very quickly under the safety car. But we never saw the safety car, even though it was out for probably 3 or 4 minutes, and I got caught a bit out with a green flag here. I was actually not signalling why I've been overtaken, it was more like, why is this car not picking up speed? I think the reason was, Alex, is because you're in the wrong gear. For some reason I thought I was in 3rd, but I was actually in 4th gear here, so I got a really bad restart. Lost 2 positions here to Gideon in his EP3, and also I think it's Matthew in this blue Escort. So that was a really cool car to actually see out with the Classic and Modern. Really nice to see that car out on track. But we got past him, I've raced him actually I think before when he was in GT, so that was nice to see him out again with Classic and Modern. But we got past him, and now my sights were set on getting past Gideon. So our cars may look similar from the outside, but there are a couple of noticeable differences here. He's on quite considerably wider tyres. He's got probably about 50 or 60 more horsepower than I do at a minimum, and his car is Civic Cup spec, whereas mine is Type R Trophy spec, plus some downgrades which see it fit in Class TP, including the tyres. But we get that move around the inside of Gideon and we get past him here, but the following corner will actually see me sort of mess up because Ken gets quite a bad exit out of this corner, a very slow mid-corner, and once again I just don't shift down, and Gideon gets a much better exit, and it also shows his he's got a lot more power. You'll just see him sort of fly past us on the left-hand side here. Look how much extra speed he's carrying here, and I wanted to be respectful here. I think I could have kept it side by side. Maybe not, maybe on reflection I couldn't have done that, but I wanted to make sure just get through this corner safely. I feel like I had the speed on Gideon to get past him. But yeah, kept it clean through that last corner, lost some time, but head back down straight away and trying to get this position back from Gideon. So into the braking zone, you can see how much we're gaining on both the cars in front in that braking zone, but it's really that top end speed where I'm really struggling to these two cars in front, where they have substantially more power, and power to weight, definitely they're a chunk ahead of me. So we're trying to get past Gideon in the braking zone, really. That's our main thing, and you can see through the corners I'm closing, but the unfortunate thing, into my favourite braking zone, is actually a bit of a straight here. So even though I get a better exit, I'm having to use all the slipstream and just hoping that Gideon maybe brakes a bit early, and I think he does. We sort of switch to the inside here and we get the move done to the inside here. Now, I was aware that we were now going into two longer straights after this chicane here, so I needed to make sure I got a good exit out of here, and Ken doesn't get the best exit once again, but I was hopefully just going to stay in his slipstream, but we're losing quite a bit. Look how much time we're losing to him, and I'm looking at my mirrors, and then Gideon, is he coming around our outside? No, he's not. We've got the position, and now we're just going to hopefully hold that for the rest of this race, and that was the case. I couldn't really keep up with Ken. He was actually a lot quicker, but just couldn't get all together to get the overtake done. We got it done in the first race, but not in the second one. There we go, another result in the bag. 5 races out of 6 finished. Now we've got one more to do, the GTs, and obviously we're hoping this time to try and beat Ray in his Ferrari. Well, I thought there's 2 ways to go about this last race, because I hadn't got really a clean lap this whole day. I wanted to see how quickly I could go, so that was a big thing, try and go for a fastest lap, but also I was going to try my best to beat Ray in that Ferrari this race as well. So let's see how it goes. The starting grid was your second fastest time in qualifying, but as mentioned with our discussion with the clerk of the course at the start of the day, we're all good because we just did the qualifying with the hot hatch, so we'd start at the back for this race as well. But that was all good. I just wanted to get the laps in as mentioned, and this day it sort of turned out really well, and there's a bit of a spin in front for a Ginetta, so I'm just backing up, just slow through these first few corners, and then I'll get my laps in as we exit here. Obviously I want to try and get past that Ginetta. We were a good chunk quicker than it in that first race, and then my aim, well, it was really down to what happened once I got past the Ginetta, really. If I was close enough, I was going to try and get past Ray in the Ferrari, but I also really wanted to get a clean lap in to see what my lap times would be like. And we did manage to do that later on in this race, so that was a big plus to finish off the day. As we were battling for the majority of the classic and modern races, we didn't really have a clean lap to sort of see our pure pace. And the same with the hot hatches as well, of course, even closer racing with that, you'd say. So really unlikely I was going to get flat out fast this lap, but this was a good opportunity here. I actually did settle into this race and try and eventually get past. You can see a bit of a lock up from the Ginetta just in front of us, and I didn't really slow him down too much, to be fair to him, around that chicane here. You can see how slow I'm driving in this opening stage here. I'm not trying to think too silly. My alignment was starting to go off by the end of the day. I think it's a classic thing with Civics, the alignment really goes out of perfection pretty soon, and we don't have the tools to sort of do the alignment on the day, so that's why I was maybe being a bit more cautious in this race. And side by side with the Ginetta here, going down to Quarry, I guess you could say quietly confident I should be better on the brakes than the Ginetta here and lifting off the brake to make sure I got the position a little bit here, then a bit slow into the corner, obviously taking that tighter inside line, but overall pretty happy to get that overtake done. Now my sights were set to try and close down Ray just in front of us here, and we were starting to catch up a good chunk each lap. It was probably about a second and a half a lap we were catching up to Ray, and then I sort of had a lap or so to push, try and get the overtake in, but I was looking at my lap timer to try and see whether, how my lap time was doing. As I mentioned, I really wanted to get one clean lap in, and we did eventually manage to do it, but a bit of squabbling happened first. So as we saw before, battles with Ray are always good fun because two cars are very different strengths. Obviously his much quicker down the straights and mine much quicker through the corners. So it was a really interesting battle, a bit like the old Mini versus Ford Mustang battles we saw in touring cars back in the day. A little bit different, obviously two completely different cars, but that sort of similar concept where one is much quicker in certain parts of the track and the other is quicker in the other parts of the track, which always provides quite fun racing. So a little bit optimistic. Can't normally get an overtake done around the outside there unless you're about 10 seconds of that quicker than the other car, so that wasn't really ever going to work out. I was determined to get a strong run through here, but didn't really work. So at this point I just said to myself, back off Alex, give yourself some space, and then I'd go ahead and set some decent lap times here. So you can see me looking in my mirrors, I backed off and I went for it over these next 2 laps. So I give myself a gap here to Ray. Unfortunately that wasn't enough, so I ended up backing off again. I caught him up again and then backed off again to give myself some space. I mean, I know I should have really just pushed on, got past him and then gone for my fastest lap, but I don't know, it was just what was going through my head on the day, just do it this way, and it all worked out. So this ended up being my fastest lap of the day. You can see Ray is way off in the distance right now. I really had backed off, and we had 2 faster cars in the middle of us here, a Janetta and a TCR car, so they were in the middle of us here, but this was my fastest lap, which was definitely not perfect. There was probably about another second in it, I think, on reflection, but I was really struggling for pace this whole day actually. I mean, the racecraft and so on was actually not terrible. It's better than it has been in the past, but still some silly mistakes. But really, the whole thing throughout the whole day that was annoying me was just my pure pace wasn't there. I've been into the 18s with this car, which I know is still probably a chunk away from its limit, but I was like, why am I still so far away from this? I mean, the whole day I was lapping in the 20s, and going into this last race of the day I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get into the 19s. That was my big thing. I want to try and get into the 19s on this day. I mean, I know the tyres I'm running on aren't probably quite as good as the one I did my best lap round this track on, but still the conditions were, reasonably fair. The track wasn't incredibly hot and so on, so to be honest, I thought I should be going quicker than I was. But even with that near off-track excursion, this was before the track limits were changed, just to be clear, track limits rules. So this lap did count, even though I definitely did go off the track there, and that was my fastest lap of the day. It was into the 19s. It was a 19.5. It wasn't a very good lap time, but to put it into context, Ray's fastest lap was a 21.4, so I was nearly 2 seconds quicker on my best lap. So I guess just mentally I was really about trying to get that fast lap in this race here, and it all worked out. There's the checker flag. 6 races done in a day. Pretty hectic for all involved. I think both myself and my dad were absolutely exhausted, but it was definitely worth it to get all those laps in and some really good experience going for the rest of the season. Also need to say a massive thank you to John, who took all these great videos that you've seen throughout this video here. The external shots have been really cool. Really crisp footage, thanks to John. Of course, his link is down below. But there we are. Thank you for watching as always, guys. Massively appreciated. Check out these videos on screen if you haven't done so already. Some from 2022 and from 2023. Actually, no, mostly from 2022. Yeah. No, this is the first video from 2023. What am I talking about? See you soon. Goodbye.